Because there is a battle for your soul, and it's the unspoken war that has humanity taken by storm. The devil's biggest trick, right, is convincing so many of the masses that it's just the other political side, the left, the right. Just keep pointing the finger. The devil's biggest trick, right, was dividing and conquering us as if it was reading a blueprint, a script, a diagram, a mastermind blueprint on conquering the human species. And so I'm going to be touching on for the next 15 minutes, reflecting on this central topic and theme of this channel and why I'm so different than other people in the alternative media. And a lot of people don't know that find my work, that may find a video that they were impressed by, only to be shocked by the opinions expressed, in particular the spiritual ones. And I want to start off in this introduction by recentering on this focus that this is about the spiritual evolution beyond the bondage of the body. I speak from within. I do not follow a particular religion. There's even elements of the archons and the ways in which I describe their interference in our world in a way that no book does. In particular, on the internet, how the archons use the internet to energetically sabotage us and turn us against each other, things of that nature. And so there are things that have been written about years ago. Even Dion Fortune wrote a book, Psychic Self-Defense, but the book was written 100 years ago, before the internet came out. Yet there are things that we can learn from people that came before us that we can apply to our lives today on the internet. What I want to say to you now is that there's certain types of content that are out there on the internet that I find shocking. From elements of adult performance art, also known as pornography, to elements of pop culture, movies, and the social engineering of a consumer-based society, and for a reason, certain content that people used to pay for years ago, for some reason, massive amounts of certain types of dark content out on the internet for free, accessible for anyone to find, and absolutely free of charge. Now think about that. Absolutely free of charge. It's also said that nothing is free, and that there are strings attached to things that are given. And there are. So what types of strings or chords etherically would be attached to toxic content and movies that are on the internet today? I've been speaking out also about how the mainstream options for movies are nearly always leaning and pointed towards the ultra dark. I think that Netflix is a good example of this. VUDU.com is the free Netflix. It's probably owned by the people that own YouTube, so maybe it's owned by Google. But VUDU.com features a variety of free movies, but there's ultimately an angle behind why a lot of those movies are free. I noticed a big pro-CIA theme, a big pro-cop theme. I'm not totally anti-cop or completely anti-government, but I'm not a fan of what the intelligence agencies have done to our planet. And I've talked recently in other videos how they have likely outsourced elements of psychological operations. A lot of people don't want to hear this, to divide us over political belief, right? When there's so many more important things to be concerned about, either our own physical survival, psychological survival, which is mental health, and I tackle topics that nobody else in the alternative media tackles. I go outside of just being reactionary and just constantly talking about Trump, either for or against. I abstain from that left-right paradigm. And as someone that isn't drinking the Donald Trump Kool-Aid, I'm also not possessed by a false belief system that Donald Trump is the root of all evil in the world. And so I will alienate people from supporting my work that are in the paradigm of the left and the right, because anytime you focus solely on helping souls see the way to the door so they can turn the knob themselves. And now we're talking about turn the knob because I'm not the one doing it. People that come across my content and content like this can come across certain keywords that can help them turn the knob on that cord behind them and decord from the matrix. So when I talk about going beyond the illusions of separation, racism, classism, and things like that, I'm helping people that are stuck in those lower world states of psychology uproot themselves. And I think there's a lot of levels that myself, others, that we have to go before evolving beyond this world. The fact of the matter is, some of us may be in this world longer than we'd like to. The question is, what type of role do we want to play if we end up recycled back into this matrix? Because I'll tell you what, from what I've seen out there in some of the psychotic levels of programming, animation, violence, video games, sure, some of that is our world. And some of the things that are involved also, though, in some of these themes and movies, it's almost as if it's an allegory, a metaphor for the other side or one of the other hell realms. There's a certain amount of pain and violence that is inflicted upon mankind. And then there's the additional ultra violence, Clockwork Orange style. And I think there is something about the psychology of the villains in Clockwork Orange that pop culture has popularized. Okay, so they have popularized, by the way, people being freaked out about racism. They've also popularized the very thought forms that lead to racism while having this other war. And I would say it's really a fake war that the media has. It's really just simply divide and conquer because that same mainstream media, that same CNN has put out programming that has contributed to the type of psychosis that is sweeping our nation by storm. The threat matrix. The threat matrix, the war room, and everything that surrounds that post 9/11 constantly being bombarded with pro-police state messaging. And so a guy like myself that's been around the block, hell, I've been involved in the alternative media at least since 2004. I've seen the mainstream talking points and purveyors of information serve the dark side. And literally a number of years go by. After 2012, it's not like the world ended per se, but as we left this previous cycle and we've gone into this new cycle, there's been an element of darkness that's been expressing itself through supposed truthers. In particular, the people that have the most eyeballs on them. And so, basic Gnostic thought regarding the inverted fallen world, I've also called the city of my birth the city of the wounded goddess. That's another way that we can describe the world. And according to Gnostic thought, Sophia, which is the earth, is enslaved to the archonic dark grid. And we are living on the planet that is enslaved by them. Okay, so this world that we're in is an inverted one in which evil is rewarded. And understanding this, understanding that our world is an illusion, is more important than beating up on people online that don't believe that the earth is flat. And intuitively, I feel that psyops. Intuitively. Even when it's not even said, that people are so fascistic in their thinking that it's flat earth or nothing. And they don't realize that's a psychological operation to take us away from discussing, even within that matrix thought of flat earth, there is then the idea that we're an artificial construct. I'm in agreement with the idea that we're an artificial construct. People disagree on the specifics. It's by design for people to disagree on the specifics. If somebody was really looking for the truth, they would see then even within the flat earth worldview, then we're in an artificial reality. Who's controlling the artificial reality? So people on the same side of looking for the truth as the ultimate truth of that which is controlling this pyramidal structure of human control, they're not going to then argue and fight down at the lower levels on the specifics of the layout of the prison planet. When you see people getting caught up in fighting over the layout and the tapestry and the appearance of the prison planet, also the appearance of people obsessing upon race, because a number of these deceptions go together. So, in this independent media, in this alternative media, Alex Ansary, OTB TV News, I stand alone. I stand alone. And it's important that you understand that. It's important that everybody understands that. Now, on one level, we stand together with regards to, for some of us, that we're doing this for the human species. Those of us that put our names on the line, our lives on the line. People that didn't just get started yesterday. And there's nothing wrong with just getting started yesterday. The point that I'm trying to bring and raise is that what I do is a thankless job. Okay. Now, I want to thank those of you that do support my work. We have a little over a dozen supporters at Patreon, but still very light of our goal. So I want to thank those of you that have remained at Patreon and at outsidethebox.vhx.tv, and those that have chosen to support in other ways, and those that may support in the future. But I will not compromise my integrity to hold on to what supporters I have if they're going to be in the old paradigm. And one of the complications that I've had, because you see, it's more than just a singular choice. It's more than just one choice. Do you understand? It's not just alternative media and this is the truth and this is liberal, lip-tart, CNN talking points. Like within the spectrum of the truth and the independent voice, there is diversity in thought. It is not all tyrannical. It is not lockstepping like fascist legs, like something out of Pink Floyd's The Wall. Thump, thump, thump. That's not how the truth really is represented. But unfortunately today, a lot of purveyors of hardcore propaganda, and I've gotten into the number of different individuals, even how they try to play up Roman and Viking symbolism. And the danger in that type of propaganda is they're choosing then to speak only to one group and say that this is the real battle that we're fighting, right? Instead of actually deal with the real threat that's coming to this nation and their people. Blame is diverted on innocent people that are not plotting the downfall of Western civilization. So the devil's biggest trick in today's day and age is manipulating what's bringing down this society, and even trying to redefine what is important with regards to this society. What type of label is that? Western civilization. See, from the get-go, we're taught to divide ourselves off like that. It's really about what's happening with the whole planet. And somebody can have that level of heart and mind connection, compassion, and not be a globalist. The devil's biggest trick is saying that compassion leads to a new world order. And so I'm literally seeing to a T, even with myself staying off of consuming YouTube. I hear and I remember word for word what I predict and what I warn you about. And then I go through the feelings here off the grid in my tiny home shed of witnessing real world behaviors, right? That I did not specifically speculate, but it's an expression of what I predicted. Case in point, Chad Bookson with AMTV goes into this news segment, turns and promotes Vikings, this video game. And there's a lot of mainstream. This is like mainstream stuff you probably don't want to click on, otherwise you'll get viruses and be linked over to questionable adult websites. And there's all these questionable things out there. It's not the same internet. They're not the same websites. And there's a lot of questionable propaganda within those websites, from the stuff that's marketed to kids to the stuff that's marketed at adults. And I'm getting to a point in this because I reviewed the section on Norse mythology in my world mythology book before I returned it to the library. And one of the points I've been trying to make is that there's a lot of beauty in the mythologies of our planet, of all our ancestries. And my own ancestry, from the 4 different bloodlines that make up my 2 parents, there is a lot of mythology there, from Celtic to Arthurian to Norse mythology to things on the Sufi path and Middle Eastern. There is an East Indian. There is a diversity of history and mythology within my body. and yours as well. And so there's a certain magic in investigating certain things and reading about certain things because of where our attention flows and goes when we're focused on those things and certain historical things that our ancestors went through, and something about tapping into that consciousness and connecting with them by connecting with that information, with those symbols, with those languages. And so one of the things that I remember and recall with regards to Norse mythology, I can see how, and I've talked about this, people in the alternative media are using elements of that. And I think they're following the script because the true controllers, something that's beyond just a low level of consciousness that most people think is controlling the world, but something beyond that, it understands the power of symbols and ancestral programming. Well, not all of it is good. So there are certain things with regards to Norse mythology and the cross, right, that is used for both good as well as wickedness, in the sense that the shield and the symbols have been used as protective amulets or sigils for armies of darkness. Okay, so some people see certain symbols, for example, like the swastika, and they may not know, for example, the swastika has a history with Tibetan Buddhism, and Tibetan Buddhism hits upon some pretty specific um, spiritual concepts that are not carried over into the Nazi movement and those that use the swastika or symbol for their own agenda and other symbols. I mean, there are other symbols that are different than the swastika that are used, for example, by white nationalists because of the occultic belief that the use of those symbols will bring them good luck. And so there's crusader symbolism. And a lot of the stuff that we're seeing right now, getting to Chad Booksum with AMTV, they're promoting a Viking video game. And with the Vikings, we have a lot of that esoteric Norse mythology. And I see elements of Norse mythology when it's turned political, when it's turned racial, as a very dangerous thing. And so there are certain symbols and there's certain things that are in plain sight. For example, with Alex Jones saying that he self-inflicted on accident by rolling over some sort of an injury to his eye within 24 hours of him losing his YouTube channel, a situation that I believe to be completely staged to boost the ratings and numbers of Alex Jones. I believe that self-inflicted wound to his eye was potentially some sort of a in plain sight messaging regarding his allegiance to the one eye or the one eye deity known as Odin. And Odin demanded human sacrifice, according to what is known about Norse mythology. And knowing what we know about these staged conflicts, what I feel in my heart, that these are human sacrifices, what has taken place in the Middle East today. And there's a reason why people don't talk about this today, these human sacrifices. People that are supposedly truthers. So I stay away from other content on YouTube unless there is some noticeable expression of compassion. That they're recognizing that there is a genocide taking place right now and that they have perverted and inverted what the New World Order is. So we have Christopher Green of AMTV projecting these controlled opposition talking points about what the New World Order is, and then going on this rant about Somalians, showing his true colors. And it's not so much being in favor of Somalians, it's that when I see that level of demonization, when there's so many things to talk about, even though I'm not Somalian. Do I look Somalian? I'm not Somalian. But there's a part of me that has empathy for someone that is Somalian or African, that is being demonized at the level that some of these people are. And I see that there are even people that are Somalian, unfortunately, and people into politics, people that have been voted into power, like the Muslim woman and Omar. I believe that they are being used, even if they have good intentions, that they, unfortunately, as minority women and others on the local level, are being used. They're being used by the establishment. And the people that are also watching this stuff that are pumped up in their left right paradigm, they see signs and messaging that's telling them that they are being replaced when they're not being replaced. But if there's enough mainstream media messaging to do that, even Vogue magazine, right? I could see how they are playing up racial tensions, showing a white girl, a model, looking in the direction of a black man while a white man looks on. Like, it seems like there is a deliberate, and this is why people are offended, right? They don't realize that I'm not attacking them. When I express this to them and people that are in their paradigm, I'm helping them evolve beyond being controlled and led. If they can understand that there is such control over the media, including magazines, and that it is memeing and messaging in certain ways as there's all out tensions in the streets. Because I can tell you, in no way have I seen people on the so called loving left in any way, shape, or form contact me, even Muslims, even people on my father's side. They just don't do it. They don't. I'm in my own little micro echo chamber. I want to thank the core 100 viewers that keep coming back. Remember the new YouTube URL. That's a little thing you type up at the http://www dot. It's going to change to OTBTV News for simplicity's sake. That is OTBTV News, and that's going to be happening anytime now. I may choose to wait a few more weeks, but I'm making sure that you know that. And so I don't want to compromise my message. I've been saying the same thing over and over and over, and I'm going to be sharing some clips with you in the future that's going to be highlighting that. But people that are alive today, it's few and far between the people that are going to remember content like this, and that it wasn't attacking them per se, but addressing the programming that so many people are under on the left and on the right, right? And so people can go ahead and say, well, Alex is with the other side. Really? Is that why this other side that people speak of, they never speak fondly of me? I don't exist to them because I cover those other controversial issues, that event that got us in these wars, right? I've covered other things. I did years of promotion for Infowars.com, and yet people be offended by me not following the Alex Jones Jungle Juice, but yet, right? But yet, for years, I was actually promoting some of the good stuff that he was trying to bring awareness to with regards to the event that got us in these wars, the police state, the surveillance society. And now that we see the panopticon dystopia already in motion, I've advanced things from where I was. And I've gone deeper into the conversation of how that which can surveil us can, in some way, shape, or form, affect us as human beings through that surveillance grid. We are not alone in the universe. And so, the ultimate way in which we are under attack is we are misled to do certain things that will bind us to this world. And so, I think this is one of the higher of the hell realms, but it's still a hell realm. It could be also described as a middle realm with higher heavenly realms above this and or other planetary experiences, right? There could be a higher realm than this where there's a deeper connection between man and woman. Or maybe we're not even in that limited form. But there is a reason why we are in duality, why there is night and day. Okay, I do question my reality, but I question my reality from another perspective. Other people want to focus on the geometry and the sun and the moon, and then having almost religious zeal type of wars and arguments with others, where I will bring out the fact that within that paradigm, again, you have a false reality construct. And that is a centerpiece conversation that I'm having here. But we don't have to get distracted by the how the prison planet appears. It's ultimately why are we even in that type of this type of a soul prison planet, despite the tapestry and environment. And why would we think that this is the only type of a soul containment center? So this is one level of levels. Some say there are 7 levels, right? So I don't have or claim to have a secret doctrine or blueprint or any human that has lived in the past that has allegedly laid this out. Although the secret teachings of Jesus, the stuff that has been left out of the Bible, there are things that I believe are of value that have been attributed to the teachings of Jesus that you will not find in the New Testament. Okay. So, with regards to what I'm trying to describe to you, there are like so many different ways in this buffet of human experience, in this human experience where someone through their communications and actions can work up the levels or swiftly fall down. And when I look at elements of what's projected on YouTube, the mainstream media, adult entertainment, and the stuff on TV, and why they even would be sexualizing the youth, going back to talking about the human trafficking agenda, which I talk about within the independent media. I mean, think about that. And it's the idea of when things collapse, unfortunately, the things that have happened before happening again. And a lot of people that are alive in this generation, maybe they're first time souls that just got here that don't have the past life soul memory of those type of things happening. Some people may be here from the lower realms. And there could be parallel lower realms where some things happen in some realms and some things don't happen. And there could be higher realms that people could fall from in the planetary sphere matrix. And so this is a fallen hell realm where miracles are possible for people that are on the way upwards. And there are also things, unspeakable things that happen here as well. And there are, trying to put this more directly, there are specific things that people are encouraged to do to others right now that ultimately is going to earn them a one-way ticket to a darker type of hell. And they're not aware of this because they don't think that their actions are going to lead to that type of a place. There's a movie that I watched recently that I've never seen before called Constantine. It was produced in 2005, starring Keanu Reeves, and he plays some sort of a advanced supernatural exorcist Neo type character who has his own beef with God because he's hoping to buy his way to heaven through the amount of demons that he sends there. There's even one scene where he knocks one demon that's trying to come through a human with a pair of brass knuckles with a cross in it. And another situation that's showing the tactics working in that movie for him to send um, a ghost back to the hell realm, exorcising this woman, and it was basically getting a mirror over the woman, in the mirror somehow pulling the entity in, and then the mirror being thrust outside and dropped on a car, crushing the entity or something of that manner. But what's interesting about that movie and other ways in which something is brought to life, there are these scenes in which Constantine has to go into hell. And there's a way that he does it, a certain ritual with the cat, in which he astrally or through some way transports himself to the hell realm. So he's like an investigator and he's investigating certain things and he's looking for a certain girl to see if she's in hell, if she in fact killed herself within the rules within that movie. Maybe a little truth in plain sight. Those that kill themselves earn themselves a one way ticket to hell. And that's something that I speculate that in this world, there are ways in which they try to get us to do those things or things to others. So we end up in that type of a hell reality to where, as I've described in other videos, things that typically don't happen to us in this realm happen there. See, there's a lot of speculation that we have about the chariots of the gods and them having their way with earth women. That doesn't necessarily sound so romantic, especially when you think about that basically being done by force. And then when you realize the difference in size between these Nephilim and earth women, you also think about, the earth women in the past that have died while giving life to these giants. Also, looking briefly in that mythology book before returning it, the Chinese have, believe it or not, their own story about this basically a racist, archonic goddess giant that basically created a number of people, but designated the darker skinned mud people as inferior, and the more superior ones being the yellow or the pureblood Chinese. And so there is this deep-seated belief in bloodline going back to a sense of royalty on one level that we know of regarding China, and then there's this other piece of information that may connect with it regarding their creationism story, the creation of the world, and a massive giant basically giving a feminine one, giving life to the earth, and so much of the earth, including the rocks, bearing spirit, going back to Bill Gorman's pictures. Check out Bill Gorman, Mammoth Temples of Colorado. Zoom in on those pictures. It does seem like there are spirits within the rocks, whatever the theory is that somebody may stumble upon as to how that could even be. That's beyond me. But animism is the concept of spirit inhabiting rock. And so I don't think that it's outside the realm of possibility. Those very pictures, right, within hours of here, that Bill took between here and the San Luis Valley, right, some of those things seem to be depicting spirits like frozen in time, but specifically in a state of pain. Then we think about the story of the flood or the great deluge, the fall of Atlantis, Lemuria, the idea of fallen angels falling upon the world, and then various forms of creation and early forms of what we would call racism. Because ultimately, this fall, this divide amongst us as humans, has ancient roots. I even think there are certain deities they're trying to appease through these sacrifices in the Middle East because that's ancient land. And the spilling of blood, certain kinds of blood, right? There's a reason why they're doing that. And they're actually using a war on Islam as a front for actual ethnic cleansing in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Yemen. Alex Ansary is alleging, right, that their so-called war on Islam or resistance to Islam, as those defending it would say, we're just it's actually a front for ethnic cleansing in the Middle East, right? That's why when you hear these articles or hear these reports about Christians from Iraq being denied entry in the United States, it's because of their ethnicity, not their religion. This is about ethnicity. It's always been about ethnicity. That's why ISIS is killing more Afghans than anyone else, but no one talks about it. It's not so popular talking about what ISIS is doing now, or what has been doing recently in Afghanistan. And I can go on that topic. But when you're dealing with a society that wants to train the people to not count the bodies of the people that die in foreign lands, but to only talk about and celebrate their own troops, like these are signs of a hell realm. And understanding that I'm in one version of a hell realm, and there are ways in which they're using propaganda, like a sinkhole, like an undertow in an ocean, and we're in our own matrix oceana. They want to pull people down in that negativity undertow to the lower dimensions. And these lower dimensions, right? That's where there can be things like we talked about chariots of the gods, basically other forms of life other than humans having their way with us. Straight up having their way with us. And there's a lot of stuff that teeters on the edge that's there already in our human conscious regarding alien abductions and regarding the potential of the giants returning or the fallen angels returning, the Nephilim. But see, we're already in the Archonic Containment Center. And we're in one level of it. And I believe a human form can incarnate into a lower type of world where a lot of those things that we fear are awaiting us in our future, that may be more or less in relation to where some souls are going after the moment of death. After the moment of death. Back to Constantine, and he was looking through his spiritual ritual through hell for this woman, and also trying to find a way that even though he's doing good work on one level, he's facing reality that he has not done the work that he should be doing, which is to serve the ultimate creator. So he faces a little bit of a truth in that movie that the good work that he's done is not enough. And when he begins to face that truth with, hey, what he's done so far is not enough, that the true God requires more, that you can't buy your way into heaven, then he starts getting worried, knowing what awaits him in hell. What I can say about this world is it makes it really easy for someone to pleasure themselves, hurting others in this world, or making money off others and exploiting others. This world is a world that operates on that type of machinery. It's built into nature. Nature has a duality to it, kind of a light side and a dark side. There's that bright side of the sun. There's the tales from the dark side, like that old 1980s, late night TV show. Do 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 do. And the 1980s had a lot of that, and they think about things like Evil Dead. Things like Evil Dead could be looked upon like a metaphor and other elements of the zombie apocalypse, where there are people that seem human, they're of the weight of a human, but their behavior is off, their mentality is off. Many people have come to wonder if the humans that they've come across on this planet are humans with souls. And I would say this. I certainly believe that there is different levels of soul voltage, and there are certain actions that we can partake in that'll weaken that soul voltage. I first heard the term on Coast to Coast AM from a guy named Maurice Cotterell that was talking about selflessness and positive deeds and things regarding compassion. These are things of that plus sign soul voltage that can help us evolve forward. And so, negative things, negative actions, uh, equate to this negative soul voltage. And another way of looking at it, perhaps it makes the soul weight more dense instead of lighter. There's also been some alleged studies. I've been listening to some old school Art Bell episodes, actually the same three. One of them, by the way, with a Laura Toy, who wrote or who created a map entitled "I Am America." And this future map that she released in the 80s, and she was talking about it with Art Bell in 1994, depicts what she believes is our future after Nevada is hit with a meteor, the entire West Coast being covered with water. I wonder if there's a reason why I've been suspecting within that elements of the West Coast, elements of our nation and world could break off into the sea, that we could see this type of a shifting. There's also a time where people are talking more about the magnetic poles shifting. I guess there's several types of there's the magnetic poles and the actual poles, although I'm not an expert on this. But we are already in the process of a magnetic field shift, which is accelerating. And as it accelerates, there's a reason why the sun is going to change in appearance, just to throw that out there. From a scientific perspective, when you have a thinning of the Earth's magnetic field, right, there's going to be some sort of, and also changes in the sun's activity, less active sun, different types of radiance combined with that which we know of and that which we don't know of with regards to chemtrailing, with regards to the geoengineering. So there's going to be what we notice out there. Then there's going to be just normal like pollution that's going to be in some of our areas that may be dimming the sun because of where we are. But I myself do notice a change in the sun. I don't know what it is, but the sun does go through changes. And the sun is something that our ancestors were more connected to. And there has been traditionally a war that the establishment has waged on those that have followed the way of the sun or the natural way. And they have even done so while hijacking sun symbols and having their own sun cults. There are also things that have been done throughout history where there has been human sacrifice, right, unconsciously executed upon a society in which priests that were more or less servants of the archons would frighten people with regards to their knowledge of the sun and its eclipses. It doesn't thus then mean, though, that the sun is evil or something of that nature, but that those that had the knowledge of the sun were using that knowledge of the sun against the people without the people knowing it. Well, that was then. And today we have the same thing. We have events that are manufactured when the sun is more active. And without a doubt, NASA and other agencies, and with the many satellites that they have launched in studying the sun. So this is what people in the conspiracy movement aren't talking about when they're talking flat Earth. That there is something about the sun that they understand that they aren't telling us. And it suits the establishment for people to be looking in these artificial construct realities, when ultimately there's something about the sun's behavior that they understand. And there's a reason why Alexander Chavinsky in 1918 was locked up by the Russian oligarchy when he was presenting his theories about the rise in wars and conflicts when there is a rise in actual sunspots. And so we are about another year out from the beginning, likely the beginning of articles that we will be reading, most likely from spaceweather.com and other websites, about the emergence of solar cycle 25. And in this solar cycle 25, we're going to see a lot of human energy move into action, the geopolitical crisis. I've even talked about the Alex Jones deception in game, something at the border. I talked about that 3 years ago before all this border stuff became so dominant in the news matrix. Again, there's a lot of you that are new viewers that aren't familiar with the years and years of content, and I'm trying to put this in context that I have been discussing these things on a regular basis, and now these events are moving into action. And so there is a war for your soul. It's not just a war for your mind, it's a war for your soul. Okay, we need to free our soul, and our mind and our body will follow. And there's ways in which, if we follow the examples of others, even others in the alternative media, we very well could find ourselves in some type of a hell realm. And by me bringing this to your awareness and showing concrete examples that I believe are examples that we need to look at, right? Certain actions that people partake in, I think almost guarantees them to be recycled into this type of a world. Maybe in the form of the ethnicity that they believe should be persecuted, that they believe is not good enough. And so, if they are working towards a world in which some people have less or are viewed as less, I mean, it really strikes me as the destiny of that soul to experience what it's like to be in that body, and then to work with what tools one has while one is incarnated into the body of that which has been deemed less desirable, to work with the tools that one has and resources for the highest good as some sort of a test. And then, I literally remember being in a certain person's living room that was seething with anger, as if it was in response to one of my podcasts. What type of a God would test us? And other things. And this man is very respected with his lectures on natural law that go on all day long. But the thing is, even within that whole paradigm of believing in natural law, there is plenty of space for a compassionate creator, right? That doesn't spoil us, but gives us opportunities to evolve. You think about like a nightclub where maybe children are present, or others, something that requires security. Why are there security officers and bouncers at certain nightclubs? Because certain people want to come into those festive environments, and what gets them off is creating some sort of chaos energy, and things of that nature. We have to be the security guards at the gates of our own consciousness. Okay, and within our own communities, there has to be ways in which police ourselves is a big word, in which we mindfully operate in this universe and reality without letting um, interference energy come in and for lack of a better word, rain on our parade. And there's plenty of ways in which those forces are very busy at this time, attempting to distract you, attempting to distract me, attempting to manipulate with our self-image, attempting to manipulate the truth, attempting to manipulate us based on our lower senses, based on our lower nature as humans. And as humans, we are imperfect. And so, by simply being in the body, another way that Maurice Cotterell has described this world is as a hell realm. Now I forget where he was citing, where he took that word hell from, but it was an ancient word um, used to describe this reality. Hell. or how. Also, how comes to mind with regards to that movie by Stanley Kubrick. The AI machine. How? Think about the reality that we're in and this dimension. And so I would say that, you know, the devil's biggest trick is convincing this species that this is all that there is. This is the only level. That the only purpose is to serve oneself within this machine, within this system. And I can see how the inverted values of this world have directly impacted the alternative media. And I, as one out of billions that's alive today on this planet, right? I feel like I have a spiritual calling to continue to describe what it is that I see. I want to thank those of you that have supported my work. I would ask that you check out my Patreon page. Not a whole lot of supporters over there, but I want to thank those of you that have been shipping in. I'd like to generate a few new supporters over at Patreon and to continue what I'm doing here. Looking forward to bringing you more content 2019. Till next time, I'm Alex Hanser, reminding you the path to the ultimate truth and place of power still lies within.